Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Iblis Manifestations Podcast. This channel features lengthy off-limits conversations with various different artists and entrepreneurs, predominantly from the underground metal scene. We take deep dives into the topics of life, music, spirituality, and take insight from a variety of thought-provoking perspectives from personalities who you don't often hear from in a mainstream settings. I am your host, Cheyenne, and I was originally born and raised in Iran and currently reside in the UK. I am the frontman and founding member of the black death metal band TRIVAX, who have been active since 2009. The band originally started in the Islamic Republic of Iran, where such type of music is banned as well as a punishable offense. You can check the band's pages for any updates on tour dates as well as new music. I am also a personal trainer and an online fitness coach who specializes in people achieving the best versions of themselves physically and mentally. Having been someone who was once extremely out of shape and overweight, I find it to be my duty to be able to pass on the information and knowledge which I've gained to help others achieve the same transformation. The Iblis Manifestations Podcast also features a variety of solo episodes where I discuss personal experiences and anecdotes in a very candid fashion, covering everything from mental health, spirituality, philosophy, and even paranormal experiences. This is the Iblis Manifestations Podcast. To support it, be sure to subscribe to the channel and visit the link in the descriptions.
It's great talking to you, Cheyenne, really. And best of luck to your endeavors for this podcast. I think it's a great initiative.
You're my favorite person to talk to for interviews and stuff. So I love what you're espousing out here. I love the knowledge and the perspectives that you're curating through this, and I'm just so honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
As I told you, it was one of the most interesting interviews I've ever had, because we talk a lot more things than just music, and I really appreciated that.
I respect you deeply, and it's an honor to be here.
And friends, remember as always, better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. Enjoy the podcast. Okay, Sebastian, how's it going, man? Thank you so much for joining us on Iblis Manifestations this evening. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
It's absolutely my pleasure. So I've been following your work for many years. You know, I actually believe some of our mutual contacts have already been on this podcast before. And I have to say, it's not often that I do any kind of preparation for the podcast episodes that I have on here for my guests. There's one particular preparation I had to do for today, and that was earlier this afternoon when I revisited this particularly very entertaining NIFELHEIM interview from Germany, where you guys decide to burn a Striper album and start pissing on it because it's a Christian metal band. And
Yeah.
I have to say, man, that's entertaining as fuck. I absolutely love it. It's particularly funny because NIFELHEIM never had that many interviews, you know, so I think that might have been the first interview I ever saw with you. Yeah, it's just really funny.
Yeah, and this was in the early days, and we didn't have much press then, and there were not many interviews, and I remember this whole thing was just something. We hadn't planned it. It just happened, and it became this thing that people speak about. But I think nowadays it wouldn't have turned out like that. But I mean, what is it? 25 years ago or something?
I think you nailed it. Considering you hadn't prepared for it, I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. I absolutely love it. So, yeah, I mean, I guess first things first, you know, I mean, really excited hearing all of the In APHELION stuff that's coming out at the moment. And obviously you had the newest single, Reaper Down, I believe. Yeah. And yeah, it just sounds really cool. I think there's something very particularly special, I think, about at least the guitar marriage of yourself and Johan, if I'm not mistaken. You know, that all the way throughout the years, it doesn't matter which band it is. It's just like there's you guys, the two of you seem to have a chemistry that just never seems to fail, really.
Yeah, I really don't know what it is, but I mean, we have been playing since I think he was 16 and I was 17 years old. And then this was when the first wave of death metal started in Sweden. So this is like 89, 88, 89, 90. And I think no one of us really knew how to play death metal or black metal back then because it really didn't exist. So I mean, we could do like Metallica riffs and traditional heavy metal. So we kind of learned together, and I was always the lead player, and he focused on the rhythms. But I think we early on we filled in each other's faults, or how to say it. Together it sounds like one good guitar player. But when you take away one of us, you really can hear what we cannot do. So,
Sure.
but and during all these years and all these bands, I think we have grown together. But really, when you listen to our tracks, when you listen to the studio tracks, when you separate them, you cannot tell that it will sound good together. You would never think that because it's so different. But I think it's different in the same way as Slash and Izzy plays different in Guns N' Roses because they play totally different things. You can hear that Izzy he's doing his Rolling Stones stuff in the back, and Slash is all over the place, and together it's perfect. And I think with me and Johan, we have never tried to be on the same spot. We have never competed about the same thing. He does whatever he does. I sometimes I write his parts, but he will play it like he wants anyway. You can never tell Johan to do anything. No one can in life. He's totally his own. But I was surprised with In Aphelion because I recorded when I started In Aphelion, he was not in the band. And I recorded all the guitars for Moribund, the last album. And I felt, this is good. I don't need to bring him in necessarily, but when he joined, because I needed him for reasons, and he played guitars, it went three-dimensional. I cannot tell. I don't know what it does, but it sounds so good. So there's absolutely a thing going on between us, but we don't discuss it. People might think we sit down, but we don't. We rarely meet. I play my stuff at my home, and then I just send the files to him, and he does whatever he likes, and then it just fits.
Sure. I suppose there's definitely a case of 1 + 1 = 3 kind of a thing going on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I guess it's one of those things, like when you have that kind of chemistry, I don't suppose you really necessarily have to communicate it, because part of that communication occurs just with the notes. And I think it's particularly important what you're saying, how your sound kind of, the way that both of your sounds, even though they are different, they have a perfect blend. I think that's very true, because particularly, I mean, from my own reference in my mind, just a lot of the necrophobic stuff in particular, where there's all the different lead parts, and of course you do a lot of them, but then I know he has his own lead parts as well, and then it's sort of like I guess it kind of blends in quite well, and yeah, I think that's probably what it is that you don't necessarily need to communicate, and then when you have that sort of chemistry and then that sort of drive, I guess it just kind of flows for itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And we have totally different influences as well, because I am not really that fond of extreme metal. I honestly can say I loved death metal up to 1991. I loved black metal in the mid 90s and also the early stuff of Venom like that. But really nowadays, I just don't feel that it's very exciting, to be honest. Sometimes something comes, but I still try to explore 1984, all the good metal albums that came there, and I still haven't heard them all. So for me, I probably get past that soon, but I mean, that's what important for me. And I take my influences from how I felt when I was 12-year old and discovering regular heavy metal. I mean, I love the fast songs. When I discovered Accept, Fast as a Shot, then that was the most brutal music. I love the most brutal music. And what I try to do now is give the listener the feeling I got from Accept, but my language is extreme metal, but it's still, that is the same thing I'm trying to push. Johan, on the other hand, he loves Marduk. He loves Finnish grindcore. He wants blast beats faster than anything. He has, when I say one of my favorite records in the world is Van Halen's 1984, and I think the song Jump that has no guitars is their best song. He walks out of the room and he's like, I'm proud to not have heard that, because he thinks that totally girly.
Wow.
So so I come from this kind of more poser metal style, which I don't care about it, but I like it. And he comes from the total opposite. And I think that widens our sound. And when he thinks I play too emotional or so, then I think he just bashes his instrument and balances up. And when he does his total devastating riffs, I try and take it down and give that some atmosphere, because sometimes he writes riffs and they're so brutal, but I need something in there, then I put that in there, and that is a good thing.
That's really interesting to hear, man. And I guess I can kind of hear that, because there's a feeling when you say that you're trying to refer back to the old days. I think that your music certainly has at least still preserved that kind of spirit and the energy. You know, like when I was listening to In APHELION earlier, I was like, you know, it's modern production, it's very good quality, but it still has that kind of an old school feel to it. One of the things about it, I suppose, is that kind of mid-paced sort of like tempo, you know, kind of like it's not fully a blast beat, but it's not quite a thrash beat. You know, that sort of the threshold around like 150 BPM to like 170, 180, you know, where it's like kind of like right in the middle. And I think that kind of brings out that old school feeling a bit more. And one thing, by the way, just as a little bracket here, I have to open up. I guess this is credit to my friends, you know, but the fact that you're saying you're not into modern extreme metal, I think is perhaps a little bit of credit to the guys in Master Skull as well, which I know that you've been supporting. Yeah.
Yeah, but I like their music, but you can hear that they like heavy metal.
Absolutely.
I think they do riffs just like me. They listen to heavy metal, or at least they have the heavy metal feel, and then they take it to the extreme. But they are talented. They have something. And one of 5 albums the years now that I really felt like, this is good. So I like extreme music, but it has to shock me. I mean, extreme music should in some way shock the listener. Otherwise, you don't need to take it to extreme. You know, why do you have this language? I always say this about growling vocals. If you're not mad about something, don't growl. Don't sing about flowers and growl. You have to be angry. Why are you using your angry voice if you're not angry? Stop it. And I think it's the same here.
I love, well, listen, man, you're preaching to the choir right there. I absolutely love that approach. I should mention also that the very first Master Skull EP, I was actually the lead vocals on that. And then,
really?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I
So
didn't know.
yeah. The 3-track EP. Obviously, they're still they still
Yeah.
went on to do great things after that. I think the full length
Yeah.
album that they did was very good, with John actually doing the vocals himself. But
Yeah.
I think I totally agree with you. I think that one thing that this actually is something that bothers me a lot when I see or hear extreme metal bands, that it's almost like it's formalized, if that makes sense. It's almost like it's as if they're cooking off of a recipe book rather than actually meaning it and executing what they really feel, you know. And I think I totally agree with what you're saying. It's not a genre of music that you do because you want to make money or because it's trendy. You do it because you need to do it, otherwise you will kill someone. That's the way I feel about it anyway, you know.
Yeah, it is, and it's also, I mean, this was something that I laid out the map for this when I was, I think, 12. In the end of 1984 or something, I drifted away from friends. You know, before puberty, it's kind of hard times, and my Walkman and the music was really the only thing that kept me sane. It was, I could always listen to Iron Maiden and refuel, so to speak. And there was one day where I stood on the schoolyard and I listened to "Hallowed Be Thy Name" with Maiden, and I felt like this is my life. I will never stray away from this path. I will never let these values down. And still to this day, this is one of the most important days in my life, that was. And I feel I still live by it, and I have the power to create and the will to create. But also, I also, maybe why I play this kind of music, I am not trying to copy my heroes. I mean, it would be a natural thing for me to write music that sounded exactly like 1984, copy Defenders of the Faith with Judas Priest. But you must realize that Judas Priest, they were trying to do something new. They were copying nothing. So if I want to do like Judas Priest, I have to create something new. I cannot do like Judas Priest and copy their 19. That is wrong. So that's why I aim for the best studio sound. When I listen to music, I prefer the first Bathory or black metal with Venom. That's how I want black metal to sound. But that would be false in with my dedication, because then I would mimic something old. They were not trying to do bad albums. They were trying to do the best they could with the money they had, the knowledge they had, and the skills they had. Venom and Bathory, they were trying to do it good, but it wasn't better than that. And therefore, I must try and do something as good as I can now, and I am. And I'm using modern techniques, modern studios. I record on my computer at home. I maybe I don't play guitar like a modern player. I think in my solos they are still from 1984-ish there. But sure. I think it would be false to make a good album and then make it sound bad, although you can make it sound good.
Well, yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, listen, man, I appreciate that approach. I have to admit, I'm very much of an elitist myself when it comes to this genre of music. You know, I'm not necessarily anti things that are new. I'm just anti things that don't feel genuine. You know. And I think that's kind of what you're referring to there. And obviously, I don't think we can fucking deny the greatness of the early Bathory and Venom or Hellhammer and that's sort of the first wave. But also even maybe a little bit later on, I think Brazil had some great stuff, you know, with like Bloody Vengeance, you know, or Sarcophagus, Inri and stuff. You know, you can't fuck with those albums, you know. But
no, that album Inri. We must stop on that, because I mean that album, it puzzles me every time, because when I put it on, it's like, no, fuck, this is just kids trying to do something they cannot. I mean, Didi Crazy on the drums, it's constant uphill for his blast beats. And no one is together. And I feel like, no, we're just stupid. This is just because everybody says it good, that is good. It's really a bad record, I think. And then comes the song Inri, and the atmosphere opens, and I understand the whole album immediately. And when I listen back to the first song, it's like, oh, I was stupid. I was too dumb to realize what they were doing. But that song is like a key. And really, there's nothing really sounding like that anymore. And I don't even think it was because they were so early with it, but something so eerie that kids with can come up with tools they have at hand, so to speak. That album is so good.
I 100% agree. And this brings me to one of my favorite sayings of all time, and I'd love to hear your take on this. But the saying is that art is the compromise between reality and the imagination. And I think that this is so applicable, especially when you look at those sort of earlier sort of extreme metal releases, because the equipment and the technology was so limited at the time. The physical and the actual musicality of it, particularly in the case of Inri, was obviously they were aiming for things that were they were way out of their actual league as musicians. But then that struggle, that strive, that aggression to still make it happen, even though it's constantly failing and breaking, is what gives it that really juvenile, explosive sort of flavor, which to me, that's the definition of extreme metal. And you can't fake that. You could never recreate that.
No, and it's like that with young people that are in... When they still have dreams that has not been let down, they still think that they can rule the world, and they are still playing in a way where the fantasies become real. And I mean, all these Brazilian, the lyrics, they are laughable, but you have to be like a 16-year-old that has not get laid yet, with all these sexual fantasies and the devil, and they have seen horror movies, and they just put it together, and they believe it. And you can hear that they believe it. They believe that someday this will happen. And it's that is the thing with youth, when the power the youth have, when they believe that they can change the world, that we cannot do that. I mean, I'm 52. I sometimes I can find a piece of that power, but when I was 16, I was unstoppable.
Yeah, this is actually very appropriate timing that this has just come up, because I don't know if you know, but I'm originally born and raised in Iran. Okay, so I'm from the Middle East. I grew up in an Islamic country, and I discovered black metal through very underground ways, and then just basically it became my life, and still is. I'm based in the UK now, obviously, I have been for over a decade, but I've been through that sort of that the way you defined it about that 16-year-old self, and those sort of dreams and ambitions that you have, where it feels so hopeless, but you're still ambitious that you're somehow gonna get there. There's something extremely powerful, I think, at the core of that you could literally move mountains with, and I think that heavy metal is the perfect marriage for it, black metal or death metal, whatever, like that very core spirit of metal, that spirit of fucking rebellion, I think is the thing that really makes it. Obviously over here, a lot of people had to kind of go against Christianity. Where I come from, we had to go against Islam. I still go against it today, by the way. But the thing of it is that I think it comes down to that core feeling of how much do you really want this? How much do you really want to do this? How much do you want to make these differences? And I said that the timing of it was relevant because literally just yesterday, my band TRIVAX announced that we're releasing a cassette tape that's got all of the recordings of when I was still there between age 14 and 16, of all of our early stuff that we never ever released before. And the quality is fucking horrendous. Like, it's not good. We're not putting it out saying, oh, look, there's this high quality new album. But what we're saying is that, look, there's this raw primitive thing that happened in Iran, and it's a part of the black metal history of not just Iran, but perhaps the Middle East, So here you have it, and people seem so interested in that. And I think that people in black metal, we flock towards the authenticity of emotions and expressions rather than just, oh, does this fit with the aesthetic that I have in mind? As much as it has trendy elements, I think people just want to feel something. People want to feel something real. That's why we listen to metal, is because you want to get away from the mundane bullshit of the world and actually feel something that's real, that you feel it pulsating in your blood.
Yeah. And I think the whole heavy metal, from hard rock, heavy metal, black metal, the thing that is so powerful with metal is that you don't have to explain your feelings. You can be angry for the sake of being angry. You can be hateful for the sake of being hateful. You can sing about destroying the world, and you don't have to say why. If Sting would have done a song about destroying the world with the Police, then he would have to explain, yes, because I hate the movement of the religion and politics right now, so we must go down in flames. But in metal, we don't have to say anything about it. And that is how it is to be young, but also a human being. But sometimes you just feel stuff. Sometimes you're just fucking angry with your friends or your wife or anyone or your job, but you don't really have a good explanation. Why are that? But you need to do it anyway. And if you would have to explain, it would destroy the movement, and I think metal lets you do that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, actually, because you don't have to explain it. It's just it's just a state of being, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is, and I think that is so important. And I think it's we have taken it to it. Metal had to develop and be more and more extreme to keep this feeling, because nowadays, if you listen to Burn with Deep Purple, you will not feel the exact same amount of power that was, but it was back then. That it was.
I don't know, man. I feel a lot of fucking power when I listen to that song or that album. Really.
Yeah. And actually, I've been thinking of this. With Deep Purple, when you listen to old Deep Purple, it's like, fuck, they perfected it. Everything we done after is just a step from it. It's a little bit less good. And I think also, if you listen to Witching Hour with Venom, it's like, this is perfect. We are writing it again, we're trying, but it was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would probably go as far as saying that Made in Japan, I know it's a live album, but I think that's one of the greatest albums of all time, easily, I would say. Just
It's totally. I listened to it not so long ago, and it's just magic. Is that a real live album? I mean, almost no live albums are real, but is that a real live album?
I'm not too sure. My guess would be that I think from those eras, I think it's probably more like a combination, because this is funny, actually. I brought this up unintentionally, but just the other day I was talking to someone, saying to them that I think that my favorite records of all time, if I really think about it unintentionally, a lot of them are just live albums. So we're looking at, obviously, Made in Japan, Motorhead, No Sleep Till Hammersmith, Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous, even Metallica live shit, Binge and Purge, or even Dissection, Rebirth of Dissection. I think that's a very powerful album that holds its own. And yeah, you know, these are kind of like my favorite records. But I think that in those earlier days, maybe some parts were from the actual live recording, and then maybe some other parts were overlaid later. I'm not really sure how the fuck they even recorded an analog show. I have no idea how that works, you know.
Yeah.
But
it's amazing anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's the best. Speaking of which, have you ever considered doing a live record or anything like that at all?
Yeah. I think with Necrophobic, we have been at it many times, but what we do with Necrophobic, sometimes they say we are Iron Maiden with spikes, because we're not trying to put on this evil show where we stand still. We run around and we do more of a heavy metal show, and we do mistakes. You know, in order to keep the contact with the audience in a way that is more Scorpions and Maiden than Slayer. I mean, you take the wrong chords and stuff like that. So when we have listened to our live recordings, we feel like this is fucking bad. But live, when you have the whole thing, it's very powerful and good. But when you listen to it, oh no. But with In APHELION, actually, we bought some. There was one gig, I think Dark Easter, that was taped, and I bought it. But that I probably will do something with. But I have not. Then Reaper Dawn came in, and I have not started to edit the files. But I think we have something there, and that is also a lot because Marco, our drummer, he's like a metronome, but still he has the groove, but he is so fantastic. And when you have someone that keeps the tempo like that, and the drums are so much of black metal, really, and when he does it perfectly, it doesn't really matter that we drift a little bit over it.
Sure, I got you. I mean, that's a very modest answer. You know, I'll give you credit for that. Yeah. No, that's cool. You know, I mean, I think it's one of those things, because when you're playing live as well, there's that sort of really explosive nature to it, you know, and people who are watching it obviously enjoy it, and yeah, it's all about the moment. So yeah, you're right. Sometimes you think you did excellent, and then when you listen to a recording, it's like, maybe not as excellent as I remembered, you know, or even vice versa. Like if you've got a shitty sound on stage, you think it's going terrible, and then you listen back and it's like, oh, actually that's not too bad, you know.
I try more and more, and not listen too much to it, because everything is on YouTube now. Every gig you do, a couple of days, then it's on YouTube, and usually I go very hard on myself. I can miss a note in a solo, and I feel I cannot play. Why am I even trying to play lead guitar when I'm this bad? And then I have to go back and listen to Dokken Live 1985 and see that George Lynch also stumbled on notes. And I can feel like, okay, it's like this. But I try more and more, and just to trust the audience reaction. And if I had a good night, I will not ruin it by go back and watch it again, you know.
Fair enough. Yeah, I respect that. And I think it's like I said, live shows, it's all about the moment anyway, you know, and I still think that, you know, it's obviously, you know, even some of those, like earlier, like I made the example of Metallica live shit, Binge and Purge. That's got fucking mistakes all over it. But then it's somehow, I think sometimes it also adds to the magic, because that's what people want to hear. People don't want to hear something that's pitch perfect, because if you want to do that, you can just go to the Taylor Swift concert, you know, like you may as well just, you know.
Yeah. But we were on one tour, I think it was called the Bone Crusher Tour in 2010 with Black Dahlia Murder, and then we had opening before us. We had Carnifex and Faceless. Do you know these bands?
I do know them. Yeah, very different scene to ours, but I know all of them. Yes.
Yeah, and they were all about having the perfect 16 notes and all the breaks, and it was so technical. It was so perfect. And then I realized that we are so far away from that. We are knee deep in minced meat, trying to keep sane, you know. But also I could feel that the entertainment one was on a different level, because they entertained the audience with their skills. Those standing in the front wanted to see every note exactly, and then it, no mistakes, no mistakes, you know. But
Sure.
with us, it was a different thing. It's more like, we don't care. Smash the guitar, you know.
Fuck yeah. Well, I much prefer the approach of the latter, I must say. You know, and listen, that's not to shit on technical bands. You know, I love that, you know, and there's still realms within black metal where that's super relevant, such as Deathspell Omega. Well, that's like the prime example of it, really, you know, and that I would dare say actually goes almost a step far beyond what maybe some technical death metal bands do, or at least the sound to me is a lot more appealing, just because it's like less triggered and sort of less processed. But I think that at the end of it, you know, heavy metals, you know, it's about that kind of fuck you attitude. It's meant to be rude and loud and aggressive, you know. I had the absolute honor of having Tom G. Warrior on the podcast, and he said exactly those words, you know, that it's meant to be rude, that it's a heavy metal's a form of, that it's an attitude, you know what I mean? And I think that's how I feel about it as well, you know. And again, not to take away from tech death metal bands, it's still actually every now and then maybe listen to some of them, but yeah, I think it's all about the that kind of feel, you know, when you let go of a fucking power chord, where you've got those epic moments. One of my favorite pieces that I think you've ever been a part of is that outro section to Revelation 666, where you've got the sort of like the natural harmonics, you know, and then Johan's doing the power chords. I fucking love that part. You can not listen to that and not feel the power, you know, and feel your balls expanding, you know.
That was an experiment long time ago now, but it was an experiment to see how much those, if I could do a melody line with those harmonics. It's actually already on the third Antichrist album with Necrophobic. I do the first part of it. I think it's in the third of Arrivals. You can hear that I'm onto that melody, and then I developed it from there. I just played with it more, and what we do there, that also the reason why I joined Necrophobic in 1996 was that it was all these death metal doing this. There was no really minor or major regular progressions. There was all these chromatic notes and the riffs that really doesn't lead to anywhere, but it sounds brutal. But Necrophobic with a song like I Heard the Call live, and I felt like this is E and C. This is the Iron Maiden harmonics used in extreme metal, and I hadn't heard that so much. I mean, and I felt this is really powerful, and it was even more brutal when you brought these harmonies into these really aggressive songs. And I think with Revelation 666, the outro, that is really what we do. We really put everything together. Everything just works, you know. The song is all over the place, and then just.
I mean, I'm a very big fan of the whole song, you know, just from that very first melody when it comes in, like the whole thing. There's not like one dull moment in that particular song. I think that album in general, Death to All, might be one of my favorite albums I think you've ever been a part of. You know, that's just my opinion, really. You know, obviously you've been a part of really, really great stuff. You know, obviously with NIFELHEIM and with Necrophobic, and now with In Aphelion coming on. But yeah, I think something very special about that Death to All album. I actually spoke about that with Alex as well. Alex is a very good friend of mine, you know, and I know that was kind of like that was the first release that he recorded with you guys as well. And I don't know about it. It just has something that's slightly unhinged, you know?
We were real. The band was breaking apart. We had there was so much substances. There was so much fights within the bands. We was turmoil, and I think that it's a very angry album from very angry people going into deep depression, and I think you can hear it. That's the authenticity of that album. This is not five people pretending to do a brutal album. This was maybe the most brutal times of my life. That and from that on, it just went deeper and deeper. So, I think you can hear that because the album before, Reamthursum, has some kind of controlled atmosphere in a way.
Yeah.
It's a good album, but you can feel like, this is five persons sitting down writing this, communicating. But Death to All is just like fucking blast from nothing, and it really is. I mean, and it broke up the band. That's when Johan and me we left the band after we toured a little, and then there was nothing more because the chaos was real. We could not work with each other anymore after that.
That's really fascinating to hear. And now when I reflect back on it, because it's an album I've heard a lot, I've also listened to Rimthursum many a times, you know. Like I said, we actually used to do a cover of it with Master Skull from one of the songs on that. But I think that's so what was it that was contributing to this? You kind of pointed to that there was substance use that was doing it. Fights, or was it just like a need and a desire for the band to really make it, and then perhaps that was something that was weighing, or what was it?
I think we had been on the roads for many years. We had been working, and I think in one way my drinking definitely got heavier, more than I planned. You know, when you plan to drink 10 beers and you drink 25, you know, each time. And our singer Tobias, he was experimenting a lot with drugs. So his whole lyric writing and songwriting, it became real with the person. He's a very special person. He was my best friend, and with his personality disorder, or what to say, let's call it personality, and drugs. When he wrote about demons and the lyrics he wrote, they were real to him. It was not pretend.
Is this Tobias you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. This was his real world. When he wrote about demons, and even that's very interesting with Lilith. That is totally different album, but Tobias' lyrics on that, if you realize this is Tobias' everyday life sights, this is the world he actually believes he sees, then it's on a total different level. It's almost Syd Barrett, you know. This is something else. And I think Tobias, he drifted more and more into esoteric or black metal world, and he said that he passed the point of no return. He almost sold his soul to the devil, and he has plunged into the hole, and let's see if I ever come back. He really didn't. And for me, I also just gave up. I just gave up trying to be good. So this is really our most, when we lived, we lived black metal, really, from this kind of maybe a bit cliche with all this substance and stuff like that, but it also made us stay within this concept. I mean, now I have a family, I do this, I put my kids to bed, and then I write music, but then this was the whole thing, you know. So it is different.
It is. And I think there's a lot to unpack on that, because you know, especially when it comes to black metal, you know, it's like, it's not always so much even about the sound, but that sort of what you're explaining about him there, that sort of thing of, let me find the darkest, blackest place within my own mind and within the world, kind of thing. That almost is like in the context of black metal, especially more than probably any other culture in the world, that's a badge of honor. Is let's see how dark we can make this thing. And I have to admit, I have my own personal experiences of this. And there's a reason why I also turned my own life around, because it's kind of like the closer you get to it, it feels like maybe it's serving your band, maybe it's serving your art, but is it? Because obviously I understand that there was the incident that happened with him, which led to the departure of the band. We don't have to talk about that. I think everyone already knows. But I think that just I don't know. It's a double-edged sword. Like when you approach this music, do you do it so it's all true and evil, or is there a balance? How does one approach such a thing? Where you feel like, oh, this is still real, but then you can still reach that darkness and that sort of evil thing without completely destroying yourself. Is that even a possible thing?
I think you have to have sane people working around you. When you are a unit like that, drifting away, this was especially me and Tobias, like going crazy, both of us. But you have to have some people in the band or around the band that can pull up the pieces and put it, because if you are chaos for real, then you cannot work. Someone has to put you on a plane and go there, do this at 7 o'clock. And so I think nowadays I have both the drive and the direction. Back then I had only the drive, and it was a very chaotic drive. By myself, I could have done nothing with it. It would have just been chaos. But I have good people working around me. So I think that is the answer. Can you be there? You have to have people nearby shaping you, although you don't know that they are. Because then you will break free from that. You cannot know that someone is actually pointing you in a certain direction, because then you will go on the other one. But it was like that.
And one thing is as well that, especially when you are younger, when you make friends with people, you just think of them as, oh, that's just my friend. You don't perhaps necessarily see some of the personalities and the characteristics, or more importantly, the influence that they might have on you. It's very difficult to see that from like a furthest perspective, because I've had friends who were a part of my life for like 8-9 years. And then, you kind of realize, oh, actually, hang on, this person's existence is ruining my life. And it's only when the separation that happens that you realize what kind of an impact they were having on you, and vice versa.
Yeah, of course. It's like that. And I think with me and Tobias, it was also like he wanted to be the dominant one. But I was the dominant songwriter, but he still couldn't let me dominate enough to do what I'm doing today. Not with Necrophobic and IN APHELION nowadays, no one is holding me back. But Tobias, in a way, was holding me back and not letting me lead. So he had kind of the final call, and sometimes just for the sake of it. Sometimes he could just put the riff or a word in just to mark his territory, and it was not always for good. I would say I really think that Necrophobic's music is on the whole better now. It's more interesting ideas and stuff like that, but it was more brutal back then maybe. But I think that when he left, and nowadays we don't speak anymore, but I could be my own leader, so to speak, now, but he wouldn't let me back then. And I didn't realize that. I thought that I was a follower, but I'm not. But I thought so.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I guess that you never know why people feel the need to do that, Obviously, when you are in the context of a group, I think that we as humans, first and foremost, is very natural to form some kind of a tribal hierarchy. In fact, I actually think that in order to have a successful band, you need that. You need someone who's assigned as the leader, and you need other people to fill the holes. That's not to say that the leader is the most important person in the band. No, everyone's still an equal. It's just that everyone serves different roles for things to work. All right.
Yeah.
And then that sort of allows everyone to excel more. It's the same as like a marriage, like you
Absolutely.
need, you need the man to fulfill his role for the woman to feel completely at peace and fulfill her role. Now there's there's variables within that, but there's that sort of general thing that you have to embrace that. And then this idea of, oh, I don't know, what do you think? And then it's like, well, I don't know, what do you think? And then that's like that never gets anything done. You know what I mean? And I think that exists in bands, and you need people who can drive that. But to assert dominance just for the sake of it, I think that's more so just perhaps a sign of insecurities, if I may speak from my own experiences.
Yeah, I mean, this is how I felt. I don't know if this is the case. It's kind of important that I don't say that Tobias was like that. That's how I read the situation. Maybe it wasn't, but you're right. If it's like that, for sure. If you hold other people back because you're afraid they will take their own lead, of course there's some insecurity in this, of course. But everything, especially on drugs and alcohol, is not so thought through. It takes away all the filters, and you become almost like a child, where you just act all your emotions and drive and everything you want out immediately. And in black metal, that can be a good thing for a couple of years, but then it will start to deteriorate. But I mean, that was maybe the peak for that kind of living in 2010, when we made or 9 Death Toll. I don't really remember when it came out, but
2009, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I think, and that's another very important thing. I mean, for people who are returning listeners to this podcast, I've been, not a preacher, but I would say an advocate of the fact that I myself have actually been sober for like 2-3 years now. I even quit drinking, which I know is criminal in this genre, but I did it, and I didn't do it because I had a problem, but I realized that these were things that were taking away from my focus and my energy that I could be putting towards my music and achieving my missions in life. And I think one very tragic thing that happens when drugs and alcohol are involved and people act out of order in ways which can negatively impact those around them is that it has a difficult psychological implication of, it's like, do I let myself feel mad at that person? Because I know that without that drug and alcohol, maybe they wouldn't have acted this way, but they still chose to participate in that substance, so it's kind of this weird thing, like, and I think it becomes more difficult for people to also take responsibility for their actions if they do something when under the influence, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, of course. It's like that. I mean, I've been sober for 8 years now, so I've been absolutely nothing except coffee.
Good for you, man. Congratulations.
Thanks. I think I got off at the last train station. If it was not a problem to quit, but if I hadn't quit at that moment, I'd be dead. If I got a chance to get out, and I took it. But I felt like this thing with alcohol and drugs that let you be, it's in black metal and in heavy metal, it's such it's a part of it. But and people always have Lemmy or Motorhead as an example of why you should both do drugs, and it's good he took drugs. No, what he did, he put out an album a year for 30 years. He worked his shit off. Everybody's dreaming about being Lemmy, and they drink whiskey and they do speed. If you dream about Lemmy, make a brilliant album this year, and then next year a brilliant album, and the year after that a brilliant album. Then you are Lemmy, and then you can have a bit of speed and whiskey. If you succeed to do that, I salute you. I mean, but we just see these easy things. We try to copy and mimic our idols for the wrong things. I mean, imagine the amount of work imagine the drive that man had.
Man, you are preaching to the choir very strong here. This is this is a very, very close to home topic, because I've made the example of Lemmy before. But even he himself, Sebastian, you think about it, Lemmy even turned around like in the last year of his living. I think it was after Phil Taylor died, and he was like, oh, maybe this rock and roll lifestyle isn't so good for us after all, And the fact of the matter is, besides obviously, and you're right, what Lemmy did, people just see the fact that, oh yeah, this is a guy who took lots of speed and drank Jack and Coke. But what they don't see is, like you said, how much he actually worked his ass off in the studio, and how much, in fact, Motorhead weren't always successful in their career either. Particularly in the early 90s, they were heavily struggling when it came to their American market, and they were always desperate to try and break through, and it just never really happened until like a decade or so later. And by that point, he had already been diagnosed with diabetes, by the time like early 2000s came around. And the thing that you got to think as well is whose life do you want to model yours after? Because as far as I'm concerned, and for the record, I respect Lemmy a lot. I respect him as
of course,
human and also as a political commentator. I thought he had a lot of very interesting perspectives to share. But I think that at the end of it, you look at that documentary that he had from like 2010. People I think that's might still be on Netflix or something. But you look at the state of his house and his living, and you realize that that's a guy in his like mid-60s living alone in a really shitty apartment. That's a fucking mess, and he's eating unhealthy. His hair's falling out, and he has to like dye his hair and everything. And he's never been able to commit or to like any relationship term because of some of obviously the trauma that he experienced, I think, from that girlfriend of his who OD'd on heroin. And then you sort of rethink. It's like, oh, okay, like I respect him, but do I really want to be like him? It kind of just makes you think a little bit twice about that.
Yeah. You want to be like the pictures of your idols and what you see. But I mean, as you say, Lemmy was a very lonely person and probably not that happy all the time. And it's kind of dangerous to try and be. I mean, I want to be everybody in Motley Crue, but of course that would be the worst thing probably. But I mean, that's what I saw as a kid, and I still look up to them. Like I think they were so cool. But no, you have to find your own way and not make excuses of your bad ways of living because some idol did this and that. And I was talking to a friend yesterday about this. All these heavy users like Chris Holmes, Nicky Six, the Aerosmith guys, and you think you sit there, oh, I'm not like them. No, you're worse because Nicky Six stopped doing drugs in the late 80s. He was on heroin for 5 or 6 years, and then he drank from his youth. Chris Holmes, he has been sober more or less since the late 90s. He had 20 years on influences. My friends, they have 32 years of heavy drinking. They are way past Nicky Six, and we forget that they had the blast during the 80s, and then they got their shit together. I mean, Aerosmith, the whole 70s was disastrous for them, but then they sobered up and made their best career ever. When are we and our friends? When are they going to sober up and be the best of themselves? They cannot think that Nicky Six is worse. No, they are worse, much worse.
I agree. You know what's interesting is I think that, and this is a little bit of a conspiracy theory, but it's something that's been in my mind for some years. I reckon that, I think that drugs and alcohol and these things made their influence into the music industry I think their job is to kind of sedate and nullify the people who are doing this music, because I think that if heads learn to get their shit together, learned how to organize better, learned how to work with each other better, but also become better, stronger people physically and mentally, I think that this music we could literally take over the world. You could literally throw off governments and politicians with heavy metal, I think, and at least that's my own background and exercise of it, because we would get arrested for just playing this music back in Iran, and that I think that and that's not just because they were ignorant. They were, of course, the Islamic Republic are ignorant as fuck, but also maybe there's a point to it. Maybe it's because with heavy metal you can literally shake society from its very core,
Yeah, and even if you don't take it that far, take the conspiracy that far, that we are by society held down because it's too powerful, but at least the record labels in the 80s and 90s kept fueling this into the bands, because they will never ask for royalties, they would never ask for anything, they were puppets as long as they were under the influence. But I think it's also very important to say, because now we are preaching sobriety, and that is pretty bad to a lot of people, but I think as the fans, I think alcohol and whatever you like serves you good on the occasions when you enjoy the music. When you go to a festival and you have a good time, do whatever you like. The thing that the musicians, we should not fool ourselves that they come to our party. It's their party. We are the entertainment on their party. I know we call it a ritual now. Everybody's so pretentious in black metal, but they go there to drink beer, find a girl, have a laugh, and headbang. Count on. But I mean, it's their job to have as good time they can have. For this weekend they have paid for, they're off work, they can really enjoy themselves now. But as musicians, we are not really invited to their party as drunken friends. We should play that role, because they don't want me to preach about being sober on stage. But it's not my job to be as drunk as the audience. And this is something that I started to feel like during these Death to All days. I felt like we're doing something wrong here. This is not. Why do me and Tobias think that the audience comes to our party? We are here on stage getting paid, and it's our right to be drunk and do all this stuff. And I started to think this is not right. Something is really fucking wrong here. We should be much more sober, and we should make them buy more beers. That's our job. But and nowadays I believe that in fully that we must give them a good show, so they can do whatever. If they want to be at the ritual, fine. But if they don't, if they just want to be entertained, fine as well. I mean, but it's my job to see that they can do as they like.
I have to be honest with you, man. I find your humility very inspiring there, because you're 100% absolutely correct about that. This is something that I've realized, because I've got my own fucking ego and my own ambitions and things, but I've made that exact same realization that you said, not even just in the context of being drunk, but kind of the fact that there's a reason why you're at a festival, let's say, that you got invited to go there to perform for those people who are basically paying for it, and a lot of times as well, those people might not even be there because of you, but just because you're there, they're coming to check you out, so I think it's important, rather than go on stage and look at everyone and say, oh, all of my fans, it's like, it's not about that, sometimes they're just there for music, now you have an opportunity to give them a good time, and blow their fucking minds, or you can just be a rock star and say, oh, hello, my fans, everyone here is for me and no one else,
Yeah.
Well, I think that's, Yeah, and I find your approach very, very sort of very appropriate for that. And I hope that there's some younger musicians sat there listening to this right now, kind of maybe
Yeah,
rethinking about how they approach these
yeah.
shows. When they get asked to go maybe do bigger events. One thing that
Mm,
I also want to kind of come back into, because there's also a lot I want to talk to you about, just the
mm,
family
mm,
in general and your own
mm,
life
mm,
and things like that. But
mm.
just out of curiosity, because I haven't forgotten this when you mentioned it earlier, when you were talking about that date that you said that you listened to Hallowed Be Thy Name in school, and then
Mm,
that was
mm,
kind of like a epiphany and a life-changing moment. What was
mm,
it
mm.
specifically about that date that kind of made it stand out? Was it just the song itself, or was there some kind of event surrounding it that made it kind of stand out?
Uh, I had been to the Power Slave concert weeks before, in 1984, and
Lucky.
that of course made me see the bigger perspective of it. I mean, that was life changing, but I also felt like that I didn't belong on the schoolyard, and I had my headphones on, and I could not hear anything, hear anyone, and I don't know. I felt that the music and the music world was bigger than the real world. And also, as I had been on that concert and seen how many people we are, there was not so many at my school, but together when we went to that concert, it was this is so many. And I just think that I realized that I don't need to be a part of the real world. I don't have to try so hard to be a part of that, because there's another thing to be a part of. And of course, I mean, Hallowed Be Thy Name, that song is convincing, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, man. More convincing is one way to put it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's absolutely true, and that's very powerful, and
Mm.
I think that's what it is, because it's like with us metalheads, we're not of the same world. We
Oh,
coexist with the world that surrounds us, but it's like we're not from the same thing, or we're not, you know,
no.
we're a different thing. How does this translate for you as a family man, and as a father and a husband? How do you kind of because ultimately we are outsiders, whether we
Mm,
like it or not.
yeah.
Those of us who follow
Yeah.
this path. So how do you
Mm.
or how do you transfer this to your kids, or how do you kind of let them navigate their own way without being perhaps influenced too much by your approach? I don't know what your approach is. I'm very
Mm.
curious to hear it, in fact.
Um, I think the most important thing I do is accepting their choice, and their direction of what they want to do, because I mean that is what heavy metal is all about: believing in yourself and your drive, and not falling into the grind if you don't want to. And I think the environment, especially my older kids that are 19 and 21, I mean, they grew up during these death wall times, where there was constantly members of Watain and other people in our apartment when they were going to sleep. So it was a different time. And I think, of course, that shaped them in a way. Uh, I will say I've always been a quite good father. I have never been aggressive or anyway. The bad thing was that I was tired from drinking. The Sundays when they wanted to go out and play in the sunshine, I was too tired. I did it, but I was a tired person. I think that is how I was not so good. But I think they were in a creative environment where people came over and we wrote songs. I wrote songs with my kids when they had ideas. I said we can
That's
make that
awesome.
into a song. Yeah, so we made it, and also today when I don't tell my I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old now, and I don't tell them to play guitar, but the guitars are all over the place. So one day now my daughter came up and said, "Can you teach me?" And then of course I can, but I want it to come from them, because I don't want them to be a copy of me. You know, they to be a copy of me, they have to choose their own way. They must stand on the schoolyard and say, I will dedicate my life to this. I will not dedicate my life to what my father said. You know, that's the big thing about this. But of course, I'm proud when they do music. My 19-year-old son, he's a prodigy on guitar. He's so much better than me. It's unbelievable, right. And he's good in the real way. You know, he's good in the jazz way, the blues way. He can make it in real world. If we speak about he doesn't have to lean on Black Sabbath riffs. He can do whatever he likes. But
nothing wrong with leaning on Black Sabbath riffs there.
No. But you see. But I like it that he has not copied my playing. He's inspired because of all these guitars, maybe, and also he saw that, because they said, my older kids now, they say, you really made it, Dad. We didn't see it when we were younger, but actually you have fans. You put out records that people actually buy, and they realize that, and I think that also gives them the confidence or something to that they can follow their dreams. At least I hope so. If I had been a total alcoholic, drunk, and crashed my dreams, as I nearly did after Death Wall, then they would probably think otherwise and just, no, well, let's behave, let's get education, let's do this. But I think as it is now, maybe they can see that you can actually both have family, but also follow your dreams and do something that you think is fun or interesting or gives you something in life. You don't just have to follow the herd, so to speak.
That's beautiful, man. What was it that actually made you want to quit the drinking and stuff then? Because obviously it's a very big event for you, it seems.
I quit everything. I was in a state where my only happy thought was a barrel of a gun to my eye. Then I was calm. When I imagined the cold steel like this, then I could breathe. Like the opportunity of dying, that was the thing that I felt most comforting. And then I felt, and then I realized something is really fucking wrong. So I had a divorce. I quit my job. I quit my band. I actually gave away some friends for a while, and I changed everything, and I started life over again, and I quit alcohol. So alcohol was not the only thing. It was one of these things, but I had to change everything and reinvent myself totally. But it was that way I realized when thinking about dying made me calm and a bit happy, then I realized this is fucking bad.
So so you've got you explained that very well just now, that of course it wasn't just the alcohol, so you changed everything around. And obviously these things, it's not something that happens overnight. Finding yourself in that place of, like you said, the cold steel being the only thing that makes you feel happy, that feeling also doesn't come overnight. What was it that motivated you to make a positive change? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people right now, who knows, perhaps some maybe even listening to this right now, who feel like their only happy thought is that cold steel.
It's a bit cliche maybe, but I met the girl that is now my wife. She was I met someone that gave me perspective, really. I realized that this person, both she want to be with me, but she lives in a different reality, although she is the same room. I want to be in her reality, or I want to be like her in my reality. I have no idea what would have happened if I had not met her. I cannot say it's the only thing that happened, but it started the work of getting somewhere, because I was inspired by her and to go someplace else, really.
That's very powerful. I think there's something that I think as men in particular, something that the right female presence can evoke a sense of responsibility that nothing else can. I think, I say that I say that because my own partner has had exactly the same effect on me. Perhaps I'm just relating to what you're saying here. Not just saying that for the sake of it. But yeah, I think there's that kind of like. I think in your life, when it's just yourself, you kind of you don't give a shit. You don't care. You don't care about anything.
No. And that is the bad thing, because I mean, people are writing me sometimes. Every once a year, I write something about having done sober anniversary or something, and then people write me on Messenger and say, tell me about their own addiction and stuff like that. And if I had any advice and so on, but I don't have good advice for those who are lonely. And I feel so bad that I don't, because I think if I had been lonely, I don't know if I could have done this. I don't know. At least I didn't try it that way. So I have nothing. I can't show someone the ways, and I feel like it's so luxurious to have someone. It's almost like cheating. Oh, you got off the bus, but you have a partner. Yeah. Then it was then it was not real.
No, I appreciate that. Yes, you're right, because I'm sure that there are those people who haven't found that someone yet. But I also think that before you find that someone, and that maybe that someone will bring the best out of you, but ultimately you have to find yourself first and foremost. And I think that because I get those kind of messages as well, and I sometimes have a hard time articulating it, but as of late I think I've kind of found like a solid definition that can go with that, is that in life you have to understand first and foremost how lucky you are just to be alive, just to be around, just the sheer statistic miracle it is to be a living human being at this time of the world, when we have access to everything that we do. I mean, for fuck's sake, we're alive at the same time as Iron Maiden. Out of all of the billions and billions of the years of this world existing, which we still can't comprehend, we live at the same 40, 50 years that Iron Maiden was around. I mean, that in itself is miraculous to begin with. But also the fact that you and I are here talking, every person who's listening to this right now, we're sat there. Our DNA has been passed on through generations and generations and generations without actually dying. That gene's always been carried on and passed on before death occurred to the person who was carrying those genes and genetics, and the fact that we happen to be the sperm that hit the egg out of the I think something like the thousands, if not millions of others. And there's only just one that makes it, and that's us sat here right now. So being an alive human being at this time of the world is already the most miraculous, stupendously amazing thing ever. But then the other thing that you also want to consider is that the world is not going to come and help you. So what you need to do is set your own standards and set your own goals and be an absolute fucking extremist about them, and not compromise your vision and your reality for anyone else. Now, should you find someone along the way who you can share that vision and that reality with, then that's a bonus. Again, it's that 1 + 1 = 3. But you have to find your own definition of what life is first.
Absolutely. That is absolutely right. And there is a fun thing about the statistics, that we have bettered the statistics in Necrophobic. We were counting with all the members that has been in these bands, and all the members' kids, because everybody in Necrophobic has had a lot of kids. I have 4. I mean, and we counted, this was a couple of years ago, there was 27 kids sprung from necrophobic members.
Wow.
And now it's more. We always call them, all the kids, we said they will be microphobic. But I mean, 27 kids will keep our heritage going. I mean that is only surpassed by Bob Marley and the Wailers. I mean, there's a lot of kids.
Yes. No, that's Necrophobic is on its way to enter Genghis Khan territory, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's amazing, man. Listen, I think that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful, and I think it's a real shame. You know, I think just having children must be. I don't have any kids of my own. I certainly will someday. But I think that it's one of the most. It's one of the coolest things I think we can do. And I think it's really sad that we look at it as this negative thing nowadays. I think you're such a good example of this, because you're obviously, you still have those guitars on the wall behind you. You're still touring, you're still writing albums, and you have 4 children. I think that's fucking awesome. I think you're setting a very, very good example there.
Yeah. I'm pretty careless. I don't plan. I'm not good at planning. I married 2 times within 6 months. You know, I met my first wife and I asked her to marry me after a month or 2, and we married after 6 months. And then I met my next wife and we married after 6 months. It's like this. I want something to happen. I'm pretty hyper, probably, and I'm not afraid of doing mistakes. I'm not afraid that it will not turn out as I hope. I love the passion of doing whatever the fuck you want at the moment you want it. That to me, life is nothing without this passion. And sometimes something good turns out of it, like kids. It's like I never sat down and thought like, we should have a kid, but I need his education and we need money to have it. No, let's bring a fucking life to this earth. It will be cool. It will be fun. Probably. I don't know anything about it, but let's do it. And that is passion, and that is not being afraid of change. And this is, for me, the essence of black metal is doing whatever you want and not being afraid what will you cannot control your destiny. I think black metal is about taking having a drive and doing your actions, but not having control of the outcome of it. To me, it's a bit like that, and that is how I live my life. I will act today, and tomorrow I have to deal with the consequences of it, but it will probably good, or it will be bad for a while. Then it will be good again. I mean, why should we choose that? Is that fun? Is it fun to know exactly what is in every gift on Christmas Eve? Do we want to know?
Yeah, I absolutely adore your mindset on that, man. That's fucking great, and I think that's the way to live life. And it's that you can obviously you want to take calculated risks, and you want to, because sometimes as well things go wrong for people. But I love the attitude of dare to fail, and because nothing is like, I think that failing and knowing that you made a mistake is a lot better than regretting the fact that you never tried.
That's the worst.
Yeah,
that is what I cannot live with. That I missed the opportunity because I was. Yeah, I was. I didn't dare to. I mean, that's what I regret in life. All these times that I thought things through and did not do them. That I mean, missed opportunities. Yeah.
One of my favorite ways to sort of weigh decisions in life is, because eventually stuff is going to happen. When you live enough, it's natural that things will happen that you will regret, whether it's something that you said, a relationship that maybe you should have ended or shouldn't have ended, a path or a career that you should have pursued or shouldn't have pursued. There's all of these things, and I like the idea of choosing your regrets. So imagining yourself at your deathbed, which one of these would I regret more? You know what I mean? And then kind of assessing your decisions, all of that. I always refer to the deathbed thing. I think it's important to remember death and think of it as a very positive anchor in your decision making in life, and remember that you ain't got this forever. So and that doesn't mean to go crazy and then start doing the craziest shit. No, because we're also bound by time and matter and tiredness and food and things like that. But ultimately, you want to make decisions that honor your death, if that makes sense. That's the way I like to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we can learn a lot from all these people who are at the end of life, that they always say that they regret that they choose the career over family, and they had less partners than they wanted and stuff like that. They want everybody would have liked to live more. It's always like that. It's always like that.
And the fact, and the fact of the matter is, a lot of people who want to live more, they only want to live more so they can play the game more, but they're not actually willing to make a difference, or at least I don't think so. Anyway, Sebastian, I have to tell you, man, this was a really beautiful conversation. I really, really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it feels a little bit light. There's very little depth and darkness.
Yes. No. Well, listen. This is for people who've listened to the podcast before. This is what we do on here, man. And I went into this one having no expectation, thinking that we're just gonna maybe talk about music, but this turned out fantastic. And I hope that if there's someone out there who listens to this, that maybe they needed to hear some of what we had said. I'm sure. Listen, I feel inspired just after this. So I think there's something in there for everyone.
I hope so. And they if they want to know about the music, they can read all the other interviews. I mean, it's the same questions, right?
That's right. Yeah. So what are your influences? Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Great. So just to quickly wrap up as well, to honor the music side of things, of course, I guess that's kind of the excuse that brings us together. Of course, you have a lot of very exciting stuff happening. What is it that people should be keeping an eye out for? Is there anything you want folks to check out at the moment?
Music-wise, I don't really know. I know there's a quite good young scene in Sweden coming right now, and I think the youths are actually reinventing metal in a good way. There's bands called Sarkator and Eradicated that is really bringing this 16-year-old, they're a little bit older, but bringing this energy back into the scene. And I think that in general, people should not gatekeep the young generation. They should listen to them. They should take, I mean, go to your gigs that you usually do, but go to one of those gigs with new bands and listen to it really and see if they have something new going on. I think that is quite important, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I very much agree with this, and then that's why I always said that I had no problem with the fact that Metallica was on Stranger Things. I think it's good because, one 14-year-old who listens to that, discovers Metallica, who knows, 3 years down the line, they might be owning a cover of Bathory's The Return and actually enjoy it,
Exactly.
So, and then eventually they'll eventually down the line, they might even make their way to us, so that's what makes it cool. Amazing, man. And with your own music as well.
Yeah.
I know that you guys obviously just released a new single. Any plans for the next upcoming release or anything at all?
Yeah, we have. I'm actually doing editing the last pieces of the video for a song called "The Fields in a Deer" that will be out on the release date of Reaper Dawn. And this is something that has been important within Aphelion, to have a lot of a do-it-yourself attitude to it, because I think this is maybe something that binds me back to where I began. You know, when I was young, there was no money, and I had to do the artwork myself. I had to come up with everything myself or with my bandmates. And now for the last of the 4 singles for Reaper Dawn, we are actually doing that thing that we do it ourselves. And so that is what I'm busy with right now. But then, of course, it's going to be very interesting to see what will happen when we release this on Central Media, because the last album were on Edge Circle, and that is an underground label, and I really enjoyed putting it out on the underground label to kind of ground yourself, to not have it the easy way. But as I'm speaking to you now, and I do a lot of interviews for this, it gives a bigger reach, really. And I'm eager to see what that will give back. And I'm eager to see what that will do with the band, and what that will do with me in the band. Who will I be when actually someone listens to the music? So that is really what I'm looking forward. And also playing more, of course. But that's a hard thing, because we play so much with Necrophobic. It's hard to cram in Aphelion in there. So I think probably will be less gigs, but more special.
Of course, absolutely. And it's, I have to commend you, man, you know, because it's not an easy thing. Like Necrophobic has been around for, I think, well over 30 years now. And and then you think about how much it's taken for that name to be built, and even like 20 years into that band's career, you still, you know, you've still grown and developed a lot just in like the last, well, in the last 10 years. So I absolutely admire your courage in actually being willing enough to actually start a new project and take it as seriously as you are.
Yeah,
it's not easy.
But no, it's not. But also, I cannot. I like a good task, like experiments. I mean, it's fun. It's that 16-year-old thing again. Everything can happen. You know. It's with Necrophobic, we more or less know how the next 5 years will be. We're already booking gigs for the end of 2025. That is the opposite of how I really live my life. So with In Aphelion, at least I can be exactly who I am also in this band, because right now I'm just looking forward 3 weeks to the release, and maybe it will be a success, you know.
Right.
Maybe it will not.
Spontaneous.
You know, it's
absolutely. Well, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. I'm very excited to hear more of the band, you know, and yeah, so far I've loved everything that you've put out on it. Actually, you know, it's very refreshing, and it has that real extreme edge, you know, and it has your traditional signature sound to it, but it still very much stands out from the Necrophobic stuff at the same time, whilst that stuff is still obviously great and has its own value. So yeah, all my support to it, and once again, just thank you so much for jumping on Iblis Manifestations.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure, man. And to everyone else listening to the podcast as well, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Be sure to check out In Aphelion, Necrophobic, and I hope a few of words that we shared on here were of use. We'll see you on the next episode.